His name is Larry Hoover. He's the reputed leader of the Black Gangster Disciples street gang, one of the largest in the nation.
Welcome to Chicago, America's deadliest gangster city. Chicago has a long gang history that did not only come from the rappers we see today, but from fully bred gangsters that never cared about rapping on a beat, but about how many bodies they had dropped.
This brazen robbery that left 3 people dead. Many on internet forums like Reddit, familiar with the Chicago gangs that pulled off this hit, knew exactly who was responsible and were not surprised.
And in widening their turf and creating boundaries for a power play in the hood. The rise of the deadliest gang in Chicago. Chicago's gang violence has been in existence since the mid-1900s, where different gangs were out to spill blood every other day once they felt the slightest disrespect. From owning street corners to running operations against their ops, the power struggle helped title the deadliest gang in the city. However, one gang stood out on the streets, the Gangster Disciples. While Chicago produced some of the most organized and ruthless street gangs in the United States, none of them came close to the Gangster Disciples. Their influence stretched far beyond the blocks they were born in, spreading across state lines, prisons, and even into the music industry.
That the violence he and other gang members were regularly engaged during their wars was endangering the survival of Chicago's African American communities.
The gang had emerged from Chicago's South Side in the late 1960s and early 1970s as part of a wider environment of neighborhood groups. The Gangster Disciples became Chicago's most feared and influential gang, with a simple and required strategy to survive on the block back in the days. The South Side was changing, from jobs vanishing to racial tensions rising, and neglected neighborhoods turning into breeding grounds for street survival. Amid that commotion, young men began forming neighborhood groups for protection. What started as a means of survival by defending themselves quickly turned into offense. The neighborhood started breeding violence, with fighting rival sets and seizing control of the few opportunities they had. With vengeances soon coming into play, the seeds of the Gangster Disciples were planted. The Gangster Disciples rose to a powerful position as 2 figures, Larry Hoover and David Barksdale, defined the new power put in play to run the gang. Their names later divide the city into opposing armies. While Larry Hoover led the Supreme Gangsters, David Barksdale commanded the Devil's Disciples. Both operated out of Chicago's South Side with big plans to expand and were relentless.
Therefore, he decided to forge an alliance with the Black Gangster Nation's Larry Hoover in order to reduce the frequent gang wars. The now larger group became known as the Black Gangster Disciple Nation.
By 1969, Hoover and Barksdale realized that constant warfare only drew police heat and wasted soldiers. The two formed an alliance known as the Black Gangster Disciple Nation. The alliance was a merger that temporarily united their forces, and together they became unstoppable and one of the most structured and powerful street gangs in the city of Chicago.
The organization was formed in the 70s. It started with Larry Hoover. Larry Hoover was a High Supreme Gangster. David Barksdale was a Devil Disciple. They used to be adversaries, but they see that there was 2 kings of all kings that could nobody touch their status, so they united, collaborated this organization to one function. The Black Gangster Disciples is where it all started in. I was only 13 years old when I first became a Black Gangster Disciple. There it is right there. BGD. The Gangster Disciples originated from Black Gangster Disciples. That's our original pitchfork.
The alliance did not only bring about power, it brought order and consistency. Hoover and Barksdale being on the same side made them push for a detailed sense of hierarchy as they introduced ranks and rules. The Black Gangster Disciple Nation was not just a street gang, it was configured into a working system. They enforced discipline, collected taxes from street-level hustlers, and even formed community programs as a front for their neighborhood power. A couple of years down the road, tragedy struck. In 1974, David Barksdale died, and this led to the crumbling of the already thriving Allied gang. Larry Hoover turned things around as he dropped the black from the title and renamed the organization Gangster Disciples. What seemed to be an organized movement grew into an expansion of violence against each other and any other gang or individual who caught a stray hit.
American gang leader David Barksdale was born on May 24, 1947 in Salis, Mississippi, although his full name was Odee David Barksdale. He was the son of Virginia and Charlie Barksdale and grew up with his 12 other brothers and sisters.
Under Hoover's leadership, the Gangster Disciples built a hierarchy that adapted corporate structure. There were governors, regents, coordinators, and soldiers. Each had roles, each had quotas. It was a criminal enterprise that blended order with chaos and discipline with fear, as anyone who crossed the line knew they would not see the light of the next day. Things started running smoothly once again, with fear being the order of the day and the organization spiraling into a new era where making money was the new battlefield. The Gangster Disciples dominated drug trade routes across the South Side, controlling blocks through intimidation and loyalty. Their symbol was the 6-point star, as it became a sign of power, loyalty, and death. This was the code every member of the gang had to live and die by. The gang continued to grow as the Gangster Disciples reached their peak in the 1980s and early 1990s. Even the federal investigations that were launched to find out about the gang, to be able to convict them for crimes, later described them as one of the most sophisticated street gangs in the United States, operating like a multinational business. The Gangster Disciples generated millions of dollars annually through drug sales, extortion, and organized crimes.
Because of a murder conviction.
Even though they had been titled the King of Gangsters, the federal investigations never stopped, which eventually led to the conviction of Larry Hoover in 1973. Larry Hoover was convicted for ordering the murder of a drug dealer named William Young. He was sentenced to 150 to 200 years in prison. Many thought that would end Hoover's influence, but interestingly, it did not. Hoover even took it to the next level that no one ever saw coming.
After King David and Larry Hoover came together and formed this partnership, then Larry Hoover and another member, they were convicted of murder. And I believe Larry Hoover was given 150 to 200 years in prison?
Yeah, something like that. What happened was Larry Hoover was the king all the way up until 1971. Some issues happened.
Even behind bars, Hoover controlled operations through coded messages, visits, and loyal lieutenants. While locked up, Hoover was still on the radar of the FBI, and this got him to be indicted again in the 1990s, this time on federal charges for running a criminal enterprise from prison. The Gangster Disciples was Hoover's empire that he was never going to leave behind to go to ashes. Prosecutors said it was his creation and weapon. At this point, the Gangster Disciples had spread to over 35 states, according to federal authorities. Chicago was their headquarters, but their reach extended to cities like Memphis, St. Louis, and Atlanta. Larry Hoover had become a legend regarding his resistance against the law. It started to seem like only death could contain Hoover's power, but the prosecutors were working overtime to make him pay for his crimes while alive and breathing. What seemed impossible turned out to be possible in 1995 after a federal sweep took down the key leaders of Hoover's organization, leading to the downfall of his empire.
I've done my time. I paid my debt to society.
Larry Hoover, also known as King Larry, the reputed head of the Black Gangster Disciples. He is now 42 years old, older and wiser, he says.
Anytime you do a extensive amount of time, it can have two effects. It can harden you, or it can make you think. And I've thought.
Wiretaps recorded Hoover directing business, issuing orders, and planning growth strategies for the gang. The evidence was enough for any capital punishment, but the prosecutors wanted the legend to watch everything he built crumble, so Hoover was sentenced to life in federal prison. Yet, even with its founder silenced, the Gangster Disciples didn't die. Instead, the group divided into smaller sets, each fighting for control of territory once governed from the top. Once again, violence erupted, this time less organized, more personal, and deadlier than the city had ever experienced.
Like a vice lord. We all black people. It's no different.
Hoover admits to being one of the architects of Chicago's fragile gang truce. He also takes credit for authorizing members of his so-called street organization to march on City Hall last May during a protest over plans to close healthcare clinics in African-American neighborhoods.
The Gangster Disciples found their way into the modern-day gangs, and to this day, the Gangster Disciples remain one of the most notorious gangs in America. The gang structure may have withered over time, but their influence continues to be significant in every corner of Chicago's south and west sides. The blue and black still mark territories where the law cannot keep up. the deadliest gangsters in Chicago and how they earned that title. Chicago has produced names that command both fear and admiration. From the Al Capone era in the early 1900s to modern-day gang leaders, the city of Chicago has been home to figures who blurred the line between violence and crime. Among them, Larry Hoover remains the most iconic in modern times. His rise from street hustler to organized leader transformed how America viewed gangs. He envisioned a disciplined empire, but his power came with violence in the deepest form. Members of the gang went from committing murders, drug trafficking, to extortion in the highest levels. These were the backbone of Hoover's organization. Hoover spinned the gangster scene so much, especially for his ability to control his empire from behind bars. The event even earned him the nickname the Chairman, seeing how prison walls couldn't limit Hoover's control and influence. Larry Hoover will go down as one of the greatest gang leaders to ever play the game, but there have been other players who were quite good at the game too. There's Jeff Fort, another name carved into Chicago's violent history. Jeff Fort was the leader of the Black P. Stones, where he turned his gang into a paramilitary-style organization. Fort's charisma earned him respect on the streets, but his ambition could not be contained, and this led him into dangerous territory, including alleged dealings with Libya in the 1980s.
Authorities are also making a careful study of Jeff Fort, the leader of the El Rukns. They say just because he's been sent away to a Texas federal prison doesn't mean he's out of circulation. Fort's headquarters and an El Rukn apartment building were both raided on the south side.
Fort was later convicted of plotting terrorist acts on behalf of Libya, making him one of the few American gang leaders ever charged with conspiring with a foreign government. His Black P. Stones, originally part of community defense, became a powerful and feared force across the south side. The list would not be complete without the mention of Larry Hoover's former ally, David Barksdale. Maybe David Barksdale could have been more rogue, we will never know, considering how he died at a young age. Known as King David, he founded the Black Disciples. Barksdale was feared not only for his authority, but for his belief in loyalty and unity among his people. King David's death left a strong mark that later erupted into wars between brothers that once stood together.
Between 13 and 17, the Black Disciples were then better known as the Devil's Disciples. By 1966, the Disciples had merged with several other gangs.
Carrying on King David's legacy turned into decades of bloodshed between former allies, the Gangster Disciples and the Black Disciples. Willie Lloyd is another name that cannot be forgotten when talking about the deadliest gangsters in the city of Chicago. Lloyd was the leader of the Vice Lords. He was known for his sharp intelligence and ruthless command. Lloyd reigned in the streets before he went to prison and even after he was released. Lloyd once claimed to have reformed after his release from prison, but he was repeatedly tied to violence and gang activity until his death. During the crack epidemic of the 1980s, Lloyd and others like him oversaw networks that stretched across neighborhoods in Chicago. They enforced order with executions and intimidation, turning their blocks into militarized zones. Police described the Vice Lords as an army with business ambitions.
The action leader, he recruited the most, so that led him to become the most popular. He claimed himself king of the Vice Lords. Many people think he was the founder, but that's not true. But he for sure took it to the next level.
The 1980s and 1990s also produced countless unnamed but equally dangerous street generals. These men ran blocks and commanded loyalty through fear. However, most of their reign lasted only a few years before arrest or death, but in that time they left trails of bodies behind and put their names on the lips of many folks. One of the deadliest characteristics of Chicago's gangs is their ability to regenerate leadership. When one figure is imprisoned or killed, another steps up. The structure of survival ensures the gangs never stop running. By the 2000s, a new generation of gangsters rose from neighborhoods like Inglewood, Woodlawn, and South Shore. They didn't have the same centralized command as the founders. Instead, they operated in small, independent factions, with each set claiming allegiance to a larger gang name.
Oh, you record too? Oh, got you. Yeah.
Black boy
These divided factions made the gangs harder to control and far more unpredictable. Putting another gang member down no longer required permission from higher-ups. Every insult, social media post, or territory dispute could spark gunfire. The code of discipline that once existed under Hoover and Barksdale had dissolved. From the era of Larry Hoover and Jeff Fort to today's street-level shooters, the story of Chicago's gangsters is one of evolution. From organized command to chaotic warfare, each era has witnessed its own bloodshed and produced its own version of the deadliest gangsters, shaped by the times and the streets that birthed them. Deadliest gang wars in Chicago. The Gangster Disciples and the Black Disciples, once brothers under the same banner, became sworn enemies. The death of David Barksdale left no peacekeepers, and Hoover's imprisonment turned cooperation into violence. Blocks that were once united became battlegrounds. One of the earliest and bloodiest phases of this war took place in neighborhoods like Inglewood and Woodlawn. Both gangs sought to control drug corners, and both had something to prove. Drive-by shootings, ambushes, and retaliations became part of daily life.
A station caught on camera. The driver in the black car suddenly started shooting, and the driver in the red car fired back. Now, then watch as the man who started shooting comes back around, and then they both fire round after round, all of this in front of that store. Now, a look from inside the store shows where the bullets shattered glass all over the place. Customers, you see.
The Gangster Disciples versus Black Disciples conflict wasn't just about drugs, it was about legacy, where both parties wanted their gangs to live on, even if they were long gone. By the 1990s, Chicago's homicide rate was among the highest in America. Gang wars between Gangster Disciples, Black Disciples, Vice Lords, and Black P. Stones claimed hundreds of lives each year. Unfortunately, many of the victims weren't gang members. They were bystanders caught in crossfire. In some neighborhoods, crossing the wrong street could mean death. A person from 63rd Street had no business walking on 64th if they weren't known there. Entire blocks became forbidden zones. The cops described it as invisible front lines, where boundaries changed with each killing. The Gangster Disciples battled the Vice Lords on the west side and the Black Disciples on the south. Meanwhile, the Latin Kings and two Sixers fought over territory in Little Village and Pilsen. Different gangs had it in for each other at different times. The folks that resided in these neighborhoods knew surviving each day without catching a stray bullet meant a lot. The 1990s also saw the rise of new factions and sets. The once organized gangs fractured into smaller crews like STL/EBT, O Block, TYMB, and 600. Each represented different corners of neighborhoods that once belonged to larger parent gangs. In 2011, the violent scenes were on a much higher rise due to the murder of a teenager named Odee Perry, a member of the Black Disciples. This soon became a flashpoint for modern gang violence. His death led to a spiral of retaliation that involved multiple young shooters and inspired generations of drill rappers to avenge the fallen soldier. There's also the war between O Block and STL/EBT, which is one of the deadliest in modern Chicago history. It's not just about drugs or power, it was about revenge. Every name mentioned in a song, every picture posted online, or an Instagram live session carries the potential to trigger another shooting spree.
We can have block round. I'm right here in your city. They like, boy, you better tuck your chain. Nobody wanna die, nobody that's silly. Check it out. I got bodies from way back. I spent a lot on. Once I beat my case, I get it back. Like, put them out. Getting that. Block busting on the regular. Hey, get your goofy ass out, man! Bitch, I'm in Miami. Fuck you, man. Get your meatball.
Social media became a new weapon. Instead of coded phone calls that were used back in the 1990s, gangs began taunting rivals on Instagram and YouTube. These online insults often turned into real-life murders or gunshot wounds that lasted a lifetime. The violence was no longer controlled by older leaders, but by teenagers seeking clout and respect. An example of clout chasing that put someone 6 feet underground was the incident that led to the killing of Lil Jojo, a 16-year-old Gangster Disciple member who was also a rapper from Englewood. His song, 300K, directly dissed the Black Disciples, especially members of O Block. Days later, he was gunned down while riding his bike. The internet turned his death into a frenzy. Another spark came when Chief Keef, a Black Disciple from O Block, gained fame with his 2012 hit, I Don't Like. His lyrics praised street life and fueled rivalries. While his success took him out of Chicago, his music brought the city's war to global attention. Suddenly, the world was watching Chicago's deadliest feud unfold in real time. The drill music wave pioneered by rappers connected to real gangs that made the city's violence visible like never before. For some, it was raw storytelling. For others, it was a provocation. The line between rap and real retaliation disappeared as folks were dying like flies. Over the years, countless young lives have been lost in this ongoing war. Rappers like King Von, FBG Duck, Lil Jeff, T-Roy, Dooski Thawman, and many others have been put 6 feet underground due to these senseless killings. Their deaths continued the cycle that began decades ago with Hoover and Barksdale. From organized crime to survival wars among young men with nothing to lose, the city's gang wars have shifted over time. What once was an organized system now exists as chaos. But through that chaos, something unexpected emerged, a new generation of rappers who use music as both a weapon and a way out. Rappers who emerged from the gangs. Chicago's modern rap scene, known as drill, was a product born directly from the streets. Its artists often came from neighborhoods controlled by the same gangs that once battled for dominance. The lyrics were raw diaries of these rappers as they often documented stories of their loss, loyalty, and vengeance. Chief Keef, perhaps one of the most influential of them all, emerged from the Black Disciples' stronghold of O Block. His success brought more attention to the harsh reality of Chicago's streets. To many, he represented a generation raised by violence but survived through it all.
Go, nigga, run, nigga, run for the pump, nigga. Bang, bang, that's what I said, nigga.
Lil Durk, another Black Disciples member from Englewood and later O Block, turned his pain and suffering into a melody many could relate to. His songs often reference fallen friends and ongoing conflicts. Despite achieving mainstream success, his past continues to shadow his career, showing how deeply gang life shapes identity in Chicago.
Talk
to her real fast. Talk to the bitches real fast.
Lil Durk is currently behind bars for trying to take revenge for one of his closest friends and associates, King Von. Durk got caught up just when he was trying to let go of his gangster status. On the other side stood rappers from the Gangster Disciples, and these include the likes of FBG Duck, Lil J, Wooski, and many others. Their music offered the opposing perspective, calling out rival sets and speaking on retaliation. FBG Duck's Slide became an anthem for those still living the street war.
When I go to court, my bitch be praying might take a flight today. I might kick this message.
FBG continued to throw shades at the opposing teams, which later led to FBG Duck's death in 2020 in downtown Chicago. The rapper was shot in broad daylight in a luxury shopping area. This served as a reminder that fame offers no protection from the tough politics of the streets. Another rapper who was born into the violence of Chicago and took it to the next level was King Von. King Von did not only terrorize the gangster world, he made sure to make his name a monument even in death. King Von, who was a close friend to Lil Durk and was even signed to his record label, was from O Block just like Durk. At 19, Von was charged with 1 count of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder after a 2014 shooting in Englewood. He spent more than 3 years in jail before the case collapsed when witnesses refused to testify. The dismissal didn't erase his reputation. Instead, it magnified it.
Make a song with Tay. I can't make a song with Tay.
Went live, he was like, he couldn't do no song with me because my name wasn't good.
Once you get to hear the motherfucker told, whoever your homie and shit for real, you fucking and you love him. You better separate yourself from that shit.
Signing with Lil Durk's OTF label made Von's storytelling more compelling as he turned real street episodes into drill anthems that earned millions of streams. His lyrics were born from the violent life he had survived since he was born. While Von enjoyed fame, the police still had him on their radar. Interestingly, Von was also not letting go of his street credibility as he took out anyone that got in his way. Rivalries between O Block and opposing Gangster Disciples were also still ongoing. King Von's reign did a number on the city of Chicago, but on November 6, 2020, Von's reign came to an end as he was shot and killed outside an Atlanta nightclub during a fight with another group. While some people viewed the rapper as an assassin that terrorized the city, Von's followers believed he was a soldier until the very end. The drill scene gave a voice to Chicago's forgotten youth, but it also blurred the line between art and warfare. Many rappers lived and died by the same codes they rapped about. Their fame amplified the conflicts instead of burying them.
Like, nobody respected no gangs. There's no chiefs. There's nobody above nobody. No man 30, 40 finna come on no block, especially not on my block, and tell me shit. You're not telling me nothing. I'm not listening to you. You wasn't out here with me. You wasn't with me when none of my homies got killed. Nothing. You wasn't with me when I was risking my life. Anything. You didn't put $1 in my pocket. You're not feeding my mother. You're not risking your life with me to feed my mother. You can't tell me shit.
Despite the tragedy, Chicago's music also became a bridge. Some artists like G Herbo from the East Side and Polo G from North Chicago began using their platforms to speak about change, trauma, and the cost of street life. Their evolution shows that even in the darkest corners where only violence seemed like the norm, transformation is possible. Are these gangs still existing or extinct? Decades later, the names remain the same, but their structures have changed. The Gangster Disciples, Black Disciples, Vice Lords, and Black P. Stones still exist, but not as centralized organizations. Today's versions are in smaller factions and highly unpredictable. The Gangster Disciples no longer answer to a single leader. Instead, hundreds of smaller Gangster Disciples sets operate independently, even often clashing with one another as they do not know they belong to the same sect. What used to be an empire under Hoover is now divided, less strategic but still deadly. King David's gang, on the other hand, remains one of the toughest gangs in the city. The Black Disciples remain powerful on the south side, particularly around O Block, and even popularly called the O Block Gang. Though leadership is unclear, the group continues to dominate and show influence through younger members deeply connected to the drill scene. The Vice Lords, one of Chicago's oldest gangs, continue to operate on the west side, though their numbers have declined due to arrests, internal feuds, and law enforcement pressure. Still, their presence is strong in areas like North Lawndale and Austin. The Black P. Stones, descendants of Jeff Fort's original El Rucan Nation, exist in smaller groups. Their influence as a whole has faded, but the name still carries weight, especially among older generations who remember their reign in the 1970s and 1980s. Each of these gangs have evolved. What began as organized, almost political movements have split into a web of neighborhood factions. Each set now operates with its own rules, alliances, and rivalries. Still, amid the violence, there are efforts to change the narrative. Community organizations, former gang members, and artists are working to redirect youth from the streets. They know that the war may not end overnight, but each voice that chooses peace weakens the code of retaliation. The deadly reasons why teenagers join gangs. Many interview and gang prevention research find that young people join gangs for different purposes. While most people that would never be interested in joining a gang will see these reasons as unnecessary, the ones that join these gangs believe it's required to survive the harsh reality of the city of Chicago. One of the reasons include respect, identity, and to feel like they belong. They often report that non-gang life offers neither respect nor status in their neighborhoods. Gangs give them a name, a reputation, and protection. Another reason for folks joining a gang is for protection. In many high-violence neighborhoods, young people feel unsafe. Gangs often provide protection from rival gangs, or at least a sense that being in offers this acclaimed protection. Former members have said that being affiliated reduces the likelihood of being attacked or being a target because other crews know who is with whom. Gangs also often serve as surrogate families, young people with absent or inconsistent adult support, like the folks that have deadbeat or absent fathers, claim that older gang members or peers provide advice, mentorship of a kind, or emotional support. A former Chicago gang member, Carlos Vega, who was sentenced to 14 years in prison, talked about how his reason for being involved in a gang was to make money, saying, "Make that money by being on the block." With jobs not circulating properly in the hood, joining a gang seems like the only way to have a financial incentive. Many of the people interviewed about their experiences and reasons for being affiliated to these gangs also claim gang activity served some of the same psychological and social needs as pro-social leisure or sports. Some gang members often experience adrenaline from these violent incidents. While everyone has their reasons for participating, Chicago has built its gangster culture on these reasons best known to the individuals. Chicago's story is one of pain and resistance. From Al Capone to Larry Hoover, from the Gangster Disciples to O Block, it's a cycle of power, profit, and tragedy.